I'm going live. I got my Coke. I got my Pepsi Coke, one of them. Turn off my Greg there. And guys, this is Alan. It's about Saturday the 13th, not Friday the 13th. It's Saturday the 13th. And I'm what they call a TI, targeted individual. And I'm doing this one video on something they call, it's a, whatever it is, when words, not abbreviation, but direct energy weapons. And it's DEWS, DEWS. And it's about when you're a targeted individual, many of us have different types of what are just torture tech. It's just literally, they have different types of, some people get this burning sensation. Other people get that light's a little too bright. Burning sensation. Some of us get what they call V2K. And I'm not sure why they call it V2K, like voice to kill, but it's supposed to technically be voice to skull up here. So these rays from wireless from the fusion center over there, like in Salem, Portland, or whatever big city you're near, they have all this technology that they have been working on for not a couple years, but decades. And they've been silently saving up millions and billions of dollars working on the brain, working on the internet, working on artificial intelligence. And before they bring it out to the rest of the world to see what they can buy, they keep the really good stuff for themselves, for their military, the hardware for their military, to see what they can play with and who they can screw with. And they keep the real powerful stuff for themselves so that the rich and powerful, the 1%ers, can live in luxury and absolute safety. And they can just view us regular people, hardworking, some of us who don't even get in trouble ever, as pawns in their game to see who can they fuck with and know that they can buy, literally just like in a movie from the old Hollywood West, who in the sheriff's department, whether in New York City or in little towns like Dallas or capital cities, Salem's or Portland, who they can pay off to do this human experimentation. And the thing is, I know it's difficult for some of these towns to meet budgets and pensions and things like that, but to just, and their hospitals and doctors, when they're in debt, but literally to give them, the ability to just experiment on the very patient they're supposed to help. So you go in with a broken arm, a broken leg, a pregnancy, something, and while a person is underneath anesthesia, then that same doctor, without your knowledge or your parents' knowledge, if you're a child, can literally put something in your body without your knowledge, without your permission, without even FDA clearance of that medication, and can suddenly, even without FDA clearance of that medication, and can suddenly use you as a guinea pig to see the harmful or the good effects and to see what it does to the human body without your knowledge, without your okay, without your permission, and just to see what happens. If you get tortured, if you end up through V2K or electronic shocks, which is what I get, also besides V2K, or some of these dream infiltration through it literally. What V2K is, for people who don't understand, what they do is, you can see this if you look at a scientist named Nick Begich. He describes it as they can literally in some way, well, he describes it in somewhat way, I'm going to try my own way to understand it, is that they can try with wireless technology, they can find your DNA and all this, and they can piggyback off of that. And some of us believe that they put in whether it's a microchip or something. I know it sounds nuts, like in the 70s and 80s where people have said they've been chipped by the government. But now it's open and done. I mean, even that there's been on Fox and CNN, that company in Wisconsin that actively says they're putting microchips in your hand right here, and you can scan your ID, your your like a debit card. You can use your hand and wrist. Now, some people may not like it because it reminds them of the Book of Revelation and the Antichrist and buying and selling things with your left hand or your forehead or a number. But anyway, that's where we're at right now. Is that they're actually doing that, and normally the governments don't do this stuff unless first that they experiment um, using people to see what works, what doesn't work, what is a hazard, what can be used against people or for people for a benefit, or can be used as a tort of a torture. And they're using it. I actually am one of those that believe it is an actual an implant of some kind, a device, medical device. Some people get artificial hearts, artificial um, devices, pacemakers. I mean, we're talking about things that are done every single day. It just sounds more dangerous because it's microchipping. But they put medical shit in people's bodies and have been for decades. The problem with this type of technology is that we're just simply saying, without people's knowledge, permission, and it's microchip to follow people, to track them, to trace them. Kind of like during this pandemic, where they're actively saying they're trying to trace people. And with V2K, it's literally having two people that constantly barrage your own thoughts with negative thinking. And what happens is that a lot of times, for years even, they'll experiment with this technology and have the volume almost all the way down. And they'll be saying negative thoughts like, you're a piece of shit, or your doubts about your family, your friendships. It's all negative normally. And to the point where it's all depressive, trying to make people so depressed, they'll end up suicidal, committing suicide, or end up in a psychiatric, people will end up, I'm hearing voices, and then their name and reputation is ruined. That is where our own government, and they're selling this technology to other governments, Canada, Britain, India. They're doing this in India, even Japan. They're doing this in Japan. They have groups of targeted individuals in Japan. You can see them in Britain protesting in front of the BBC. And so you can see that there. You can see it in, I'm not sure about Taiwan, but in Japan, they have a group of people that for 15 years, 20 years have been actively meeting and talking about what the government's doing to them. Now, here in the United States, we're very proud of saying it's a Christian country and all this, the rights, God gave us. But they don't believe it on top. They can go to church and all this and very Christian, but they just use it because it makes them people that are loyal, and they'll, if it's Republican or Democrat, they'll have people in church that they can get together with and give them tons of money and support to vote. Um, but what happens is that they'll use this technology and be just as evil as any other group that people always, well, Saudi Arabia's got a bunch of fanatics and Muslims, but our own people do just as much, if not worse, in America. That's even Trump said that. Our own people, they're not, we don't have angels. We do a lot of bad, rotten things here in the U.S. And I'm saying is that they take the V2K, and it's not at that point, it's not known as V2K. It's just you're having these thoughts, but they're so soft, they're so subliminal at that point that it almost feels like, and it's like your own thoughts. It doesn't even seem like an auditory. It just is, you know, nobody likes you, nobody likes you, and it's so soft. Nobody likes you, no, and it's your own. You doubt this part of your faith, and it seems like it's your own thought. And what happens, and what has happened to a lot of people since 2000 and 2008 was a big year where people started experiencing this, 2008, 2009. And then again around 2015, 2012, and 2015, 2016, this started happening again to a lot of people. Um, They went from down here, the volume, to suddenly boom, and it's auditory. It becomes voice to skull. Not V2S, but V2K, again, voice to kill. But it became voice to skull auditory, and I can literally hear always a guy and a lady yapping, just I'm a piece of shit, I should die, kill myself, blah blah blah. Nobody likes you, you're a piece of shit, why don't you just end it all? And my own little town where I was pretty much raised since 6 years old, Dallas, Oregon, filled with evangelicals and Mennonites and every type of Christian, and some liberals and humanists, but mainly predominantly conservative Christian evangelicals, Mennonites, one Catholic church, but very church softball, the whole bit. 15, 20,000 people. But at the city hall, they went in on this, and the sheriff's department, which I never even got in trouble my entire 46 years at that time of life. But they went in on us. The only thing I know is that for 30 years, since about 30, 35 years ago, I started suffering a constant chronic side pain right here on my left side. And I had no idea. My doctors didn't tell me what it was from when I was a child. Same doctor, same building I always went to. Never told me. They sent me to specialists, and nobody could tell me what it was. I got OxyContin for years, but nobody would tell me what it was or really did much to even. I tried a couple things to solve it, like a shot of, a couple shots of steroids, TENS unit, but nobody would tell me what it was. And so it wasn't until around 3 years ago actually about 4 years ago, that it really started the heavy stuff, the V2K through the wall at that time. And then it started from the wall and then fell out the window, and then had to learn to walk again at the hospital. And there's more details that are even more gruesome, but I didn't know what it was at the time. So learning to walk again, and then they started back up again, and then with the noise, the complaints, the gang stalking, the people holding up the phone, the people upstairs and next door. I now have to live, after living since I was 18 on my own in my own house, and working now, thanks to the people here, but I'm over at my mom's house apartment. And so these very Christian people at Dallas, and it's funny because the TI community always wants to blame it on Satanists and Freemasons. Now, I don't know. There could be some Freemasons. We have a Masonic lodge in Dallas. But the truth of the matter is, I know that the majority of the people in the Dallas, the City Hall, they're just conservative Christians. Whether they're Freemasons, maybe, maybe not. But they're just conservative Christians and capitalists that are happy. Evidently, I wouldn't have guessed this, but now are more than happy to take somebody, even a hardworking, good person, and persecute and torture them to the point of suicide if they can make a buck, or a lot of bucks, a lot of money, and if it will save them from embarrassment, because they don't want to admit that they put me on a torture program, which that pain for 30 years, I now realize it was something called direct energy weapons, DEWs, which is something that they can do, whether it's an implant or something that's done from a wireless tech. That when my broken arm from a football practice, that they put in there, that is able to use wirelessly and be able to shock and listen and do that negative talk for years and years, and then put a constant side pain right there. It's a torture tech to see what works, what doesn't work. Literally, they have so much money and they want to see what works, how it'll work, in what way it'll work, and how much. I mean, they actually have made this and turned this even into a game where they can bet on. I mean, torturing people for sport. I mean, this is like what used to happen to the Christians, that Christians are always on TBN, CBN, 700 Club talking about how in China Christians are being persecuted and murdered. This whole scheme, Christians are being persecuted, Christians are being murdered. Well, in my town, and I was a Christian at that, I studied a bunch of free thought. I studied humanists, different religions, and all that. Studied even the Freedom from Religion Foundation, but I wasn't dogmatically anti. I'm a free thinker, but I just still believe in a fine tuner. But the Christians are doing the tormenting. It is the Christians themselves, conservative Christians, that are doing this tormenting and torture. It is the Christians themselves doing the very thing they claim they hate. It's Christians that are torturing the TIs. Some might be Freemasons. It's not Satanists. They're just capitalists. And they don't care how they get their money. It's like the police department being a part of it. But they're locking up people, and then when they're done with their job, then they're doing this program, which makes them even more money, so that they can cover up the very doctors and the previous administrations who decided to put me and thousands of other TIs, targeted individuals, in this program to torture with direct energy weapons, whether it be a torture as constant headaches or burns. Some people get burns through this technology. Some people like me get this constant right here. They can literally choose different parts of the body depending on what part of the brain that they focus on. And just through a wireless, like a remote control, they can actually push a button and hit that part of your anatomy, how it's connected to the brain, how the brain actually affects that and causes pain. And they can put up that dial. And it's about time. It's about time that we as people, and it's known at City Hall in Salem, it's known at City Hall in Dallas, and that's where it is. So the idea is not these Satanists, could be some Freemasons, but a lot of it's military, and normally the people that are about the military are conservatives, and they're hardliners, and they'll torture people. So just be aware, our own government is not only doing it to us, but they're selling this technology to other countries, even Canada. Dr. Matthew Arnegard talks about in Canada, other TIs, in Britain, in Australia, Wayne Morris, Tanya, a bunch of Tansies, just a bunch of people that are TIs. Um, anyway, I'm saying all this at a time when we have Black Lives Matter and George Floyd's death. And if one thing and I'm surprised that the TIs aren't gathering during this time. I know it's mainly about Black lives right now. But if there's one thing we as TIs can speak about emphatically, is that the police torture people. They torture and murder people. Some are black, some are white, but our police, and mainly the people, the sheriffs and the police captains, are part of this, and they get money for it. And some of our doctors do it, and they cover for each other. So this is going to be haunting the people in the future. Our parents, grandparents, the people that are doing this, their kids and grandkids will be talking. It'll be written about in the history books. But this is going to be the thing that will break humanity into a slave mentality of torture. And a lot of the people that are doing this are themselves religious. The people who hate it when their own people are being tortured are now doing the torturing themselves to innocent people. So let's not give them a break. Let's not love our enemies. Let's not forgive them. Let's not try to be understanding. Let's put their shame out there so that in years to come, their kids and grandkids will be ashamed to have their last name. Anyway, there was another murder today. It's on the news about, again, a cop shooting an unarmed black man in Atlanta. And I hope, for God's sake, and I was never, before this TI stuff, a believer, or not much into the old, that police were that bad. But now going through this TI experience, I do realize most of them will just take and follow orders. So whatever their leaders say to do, they'll do it. If they're told to torture, they'll torture. No guts in any of them. No character. None of this religious character, evangelical character, or any of it kicks in. It's just they do what they're told. So, but at least now there's pressure against the police for torturing innocent people. And at least they're going to have to give an account hopefully before a day of judgment, but now here in our world today. And let's keep putting the pressure on. All right. It's Alan. I'll talk to you later.